Morning, 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 morning. Morning, Roxanne. Thank you for my brooms as always. I still have your song yet, but we will address that soon. Um, Rukman Gangadeen, morning, Rukman. Cyril Mejias, morning, sir. Point Commander Sharon, morning to you. Donna Walcott, Christopher Serret, morning. Lynette Harris, Brenda Isaac, morning, ladies. Marge France, morning, Marge. Jenny Hubert. Ruben Rogers, morning, sir. Arlene Alexis, morning, Arlene. Margaret Thomas, morning to you. PF Cutters, peace and blessings to you as well. Morning. What we have there? We have on Annette Baird, morning. Jennifer Ferron, morning to you. Who do we have on Facebook? Estra Blake, morning, Estra. Eva Smith Spivey, morning. Marva James, morning to you. I think I'll Kester Billy, morning. Adarami X, Kenneth Gabriel, Deborah Duranty, Karen Spooner, Kathy Ann Best, morning to you guys. John Keto. Roxanne, don't move me. I'll fix it. I will fix it. I'll get it today. Calling out Nicole Caesar. Nicole, send me back this song now. Glenn Richardson, Marlon Blaze, Selena Kwashi, morning. Leon Graves, Vienna, Parmashwa, morning to you. Neil Francois, always present, morning, sir. Arthur Lucian James, morning. Riri, morning. Nigel Redhead, morning to you. Let's see here. Jennifer Dorset, Kurt Shaw, morning. Diane Charles, morning, Diane. Sarah Richards, morning to you. Rudolph Barnett, morning, sir. Christopher Siffy, is it? Morning. Melka Rock, morning, Melka. Nadia Lewis Dixon, morning. Demetri McEwen, morning to you. Christopher Serret, morning, sir. I see you. Wazid, morning. Terence Lynch, morning. Morning, Deborah. Again, Christopher Sylvester. Pamela O'Connor, morning. Joycelyn Smallwhite, morning to you. Sandra Watson, morning. Claire Carrington, morning. Claire Allison Boyce, morning. Gemma White Isaac, morning. Anne-Marie Montique, morning, Anne-Marie. Donna Seeley, morning. George Alman. Good morning to His Excellency, the President of Pleasantville, Nigel O'Connor and First Lady Marcia Keegan. Marilyn Wanza Gloud, morning. Dandy Sandiford, morning to you. Shazem Abraham, morning to you. Deborah Etchill. Yes, Claudius Alexander says, Labrie on the inside, very nice. Denise Reed, morning. Atiba John, morning to you. Macaroni Tony, Jackie Graham, Heather, Freddie Williams, Rude, morning to all of you guys. Roxanne says they're fighting wild. Who is that there, Roxanne? What did I miss? Well, they know as the elections draw closer, swords will be drawn, huh? All the gladiators will come out. Atiba John Hazel Thompson, morning. Stephen Martel, morning, sir. Ada, is it? Tracy and Donna Seeley. Donna says, I know going to cry. That's Seeley this morning. As I said, I'm traveling tomorrow, so I don't want to, can't afford to not have the live today. Right, so they're looking for needle in a haystack. Who is that? Roxanne, fill in. What are they looking for now? Where to start? All right, let me start with this one first. In the interest of time. So, 13, where is that? Right. Just now, I'll deal with this here, turn that off. Deal with this one first, boy. All right, let me address this. Let me deal with this one first. Right. The Prime Minister of Barbados. Let's hear what Mia has to say today. Let us listen to Mia for a little bit. So, let me get it here.
We have laws that govern tints of vehicles. They don't govern and don't allow dark tints. It must stop. And the government has set a target date that no later than the 14th of October, persons who are not having tints that are compliant, in other words, the light tint, will be fined. I'm not interested in prosecuting nobody. Tell the agency already, I want money. The regulation of number plates.
Right, you heard what Mia said there, right? Mia cracking down on dark tint in Barbados. And you have a deadline, which is sometime in October there. If you don't have the light tint, which is the law, the police come in for you. All right? And you heard what she said. She told the AG, I'm not interested in prosecution. I want money. Me, I want the paisa, right? The pesos. She want the money. What is Max and House used to say, we need the money. So she cracking down on tint in Barbados. The same Mia Motley that they love. And the same Mia Motley that they would love to be the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Because she's such a wonderful leader. Unlike Keith Rowley, who is a bulldog and who is a Rottweiler and this and that. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago only clamping down on people tint because they're trying to make extra revenue. That's a new revenue source for them. That going on self-crime. Only only making people take off their tint. Yeah, because only Trinidad that happening, right? But you just heard me, I said, they set a date. And if by that date, you don't get your house in order. Mia coming for the money. She want the money. She's not interested in no prosecution. She don't want to hear you want to fight the ticket or whatever it is. She want the money. But when Mia gave her speech at COP26 in Paris, oh gosh, you may see them like some circus seals. Oh, yes, boy. You hear that speech? Boy, that was speech, eh? That speech, grandfather. You didn't see the full hall that Mia spoke to? And when Rowley went on when Rowley was doing talking to empty chairs, because nobody wanted to listen to Rowley. And we love Mia, and Mia, yeah. The cost of living in Barbados is 16% higher than in Trinidad and Tobago. Right? Now, personal allowance there. Okay? In addition to that, the income tax rate higher in Barbados than here. Yes. All who want to talk about Barbados and Trinidad and the oppressor and Rowley oppressing the poor. Well, if that is oppression, what you call what happening in Barbados? And not just Barbados alone, eh? So what me are doing? That is not oppression. Keith Rowley didn't send him no public servants when he became Prime Minister because of a shortage of revenue. Mia did that. Now I have no issue with Mia Motley. I think she's she's all right leader. Right? She talk a lot. Anyway, I have nothing personal against the lady, but I'm just saying that when they want to give you the impression, I saw some Inshan Ishmael post up a video on his Facebook page a couple of days ago talking about entitled Why People Are Leaving Trinidad and Tobago. Let me see the comments. All who wish they could have leave, and if it was easier to migrate, they would have packed up and go a long time. And who left already, who left 2 years ago, and who left 3 years ago, and it's the best decision they ever make in their life, and they never coming back to Trinidad and Tobago, and things so nice on the other side, and the grass so green on the other side. And yes, you're paying taxes outside, but at least you're seeing where your tax money going. Half of all you who complaining in Trinidad, they have what tax all you paid? Thanks to Keith Rowley, someone tens of thousands all you ain't paying no more income tax, haven't been paying income tax for at least the last 2 years or so. Yeah, but Rowley's an oppressor and all he wants to do is tax. But the money you're saving on income tax that you're paying under Kamla, she ever thought to give you any increases? Zero, zilch, nada, not one. Come talking nonsense about you remove VAT on 7,000 food items. But up to now, not one of the fully dons could tell you what the 7,000 food items are. Not even she could tell you what the 7,000 food items are. Right? When they're running with that chop-head talk, dotish talk. But this government is only tax. But they wouldn't sit down for a moment to do an analysis of this Keith Rowley administration for the last 9 years. The Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration, the Patrick Manning administration, the Pandey administration, and let's see which administration has done the most for tax relief. All the different forms of taxes that we pay here, which isn't as much as the greener pastures that I saw some of them commenting on. Oh, they wish they could go. And who's stopping all here? Who's stopping you all? Buy a ticket, get a visa, bus out. Yeah, you will not be missed. You're going outside, oh, it's safer outside. Really? Safer? And that is the place to go. Run to North America, run to the United States, where as soon as you walk out the airport, you could end up a casualty. Because some madman could decide that he wants to carry out a mass shooting in the airport, in the grocery, in church, in the cinema, in an outdoor event, in schools, you name it. Right? They want to run abroad, run to North America so that the children can have a better life. Yeah? Your children not even sure to have a life. Because you could go and drop them off to school now, and in 2 hours' time, you get a call from the school stating that your child was a casualty in a mass shooting, shot to death by another student, probably around their same age or younger. Yeah, but yeah, they run up north. Thing better there, nicer there. But the same people up there who born and bred up there complaining about the cost of living. That's one of the main issues in the US elections now. People are talking about the economy and how much they're paying at the pump and what they're paying in the grocery store. Those who live there, right, complaining they live in paycheck to paycheck. No universal health care. Whereas they could stop, you talk all the ambulance, they come and pick you up, carry you in the hospital, you get treatment, they give you medication, and you come back home. Over there, from the time the ambulance reach, the bills start to run. If you don't have health insurance and your pocket not deep, you're in deep something. Yeah, but you run up so. There's only in Trinidad a hellhole, a S-hole country, according to them. And everything in Ishmael could find to post up negative about the country and advocating for that other party. And that woman who is an upholder of wrongdoing. Yeah, bring her back. Bring her back. But I thought I would start off with Mia this morning. Mia ain't want no prosecution. That's here. Please tell her I take off it. Go away. Mia say forget that. Take off tint and go away. I want the money. Get them the ticket. Right? And if they want to keep the tint on, and they catch them again, get them another ticket. And we want the money. And nobody want to contest nothing. Just come and pay the money now. Yeah, but we want me as the Prime Minister. No problem. That was thing one. Let me deal with thing two. Let me get thing two. Where is it? Where is it? So, all right, just so. Parliament on Friday.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question one. Will the Prime Minister indicate whether any steps will be taken in a timely manner to invite international and regional observer teams to monitor the upcoming general elections in Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the best efforts of our colleagues on the other side, Trinidad and Tobago preserves its proud record in conducting free and fair elections. The elections that are anticipated to be held sometime in the not too distant future and can be held as late as November of 2025 is not a matter that is before at this time, notwithstanding the best efforts of our colleagues, and in the event of any consideration for the invitation of our personal agency from the outside, that will come in the appropriate time when it is reasonable to have that as a priority. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Would the Prime Minister agree that an invitation to the known international and regional observer missions would in fact enhance our democratic credentials in the eyes of the region and the wider world?
Prime Minister.
Not as much, Madam Speaker, as a successful defense of accusations from the other side, where since 2020, our colleagues owe the PNM millions of dollars and will not pay for matters in the court that they keep making allegations about election conduct, and on every single instance, Madam Speaker, the elections have been found to be free and fair and have nothing to do with the fears that they're trying to create about our election processes. Madam Speaker, I would advise my colleagues on the other side that if you are really genuinely interested in our image and reputation in elections, you will stop battering the process and the EDC.
Member for Orokouchi.
Thank you very much. While not understanding at all the link of anything the Prime Minister said, could I ask the Prime Minister, Prime Minister, would you assure the nation that funds will be secured, since on the last occasion, the government claimed that they did not have funds to invite international missions as observer teams? Could you assure us that funds will be found to support an invitation to the regional and international observer teams?
It's still and absolutely untrue for a member to get up in this house and fabricate such an untruth. Madam Speaker, at no time in the history record of this country did the government of Trinidad and Tobago ever say to anyone that we could not facilitate observers of our elections because we did not have any money for them. Fabulously untrue, which is typical of our colleagues on the other side.
Member for Orokouchi, please.
Thank you. Could the Prime Minister indicate whether a story carried in the Trinidad Guardian on the 18th of the 8th, 2020, indicate Prime Minister CARICOM had no money to quarantine observers?
Oh.
And whether the Prime Minister in fact indicated that the government would have no money to support any foreign observer mission?
Member, I rule that question out of order having regard to your original questions and the answers asked.
Right. The Bacchanales. You know, around this time of year is when all of a sudden he finds, especially in the parliament, you know, his obnoxious nature comes alive around the time when we expecting the budget. So the budget is going to be read on the 30th of September. And during, of course, the budget debate, as has become the norm for this clown over the last few years, he uses the budget debate rather than to discuss the measures that would have been mentioned by the Minister of Finance during his delivery of the budget speech. Treat with that. He will come, as has been the norm, with Tabasamak, right? Coming to use the time in a budget debate when you should be focused on speaking about the budget. And if there is anything in the budget that you disagree with and you wish to challenge, then that is the purpose of the budget debate. But he always comes with a bus and mark that have absolutely nothing to do with the budget. You may recall when he came with his lies about AV drilling and the Prime Minister having joint bank account in Miami and $500,000 wire transfer and all of that foolishness. It was during the budget debate that he came with that. When he came with his lies about the Petrotrin, the sale of the Petrotrin refinery, when he came with his picture in the OWTU office and claimed that it was a picture taken in a house in Pinal belonging to AV drilling and all of that. And then Ansel Roger had to answer him the next day by bringing the media to the office in which the picture was taken, held up the front page of the newspaper and identified the items of furniture in the picture in the same office, in OWTU head office in Paramount Building there, right? And Mr. Roger is on record as having said, Monilal ought to have known that office because he's been in that office on numerous occasions. But the typical liar that he is always comes. Then the same thing with the AV drilling matter. The first year he bust that, well, it wasn't a mark. I don't know what you call that. Coming to drop a bombshell and it always turns out being a firecracker. First year he came with that, right? Make all this grand affair, and after that, a whole year later, he wait a whole year, you know, come back in the budget debate the following year to say that he made a revelation the previous year, and up to now the police have not contacted him. So he put back whatever it is he claimed in the parliament in a Manila folder, stick it in a drawer and say he's waiting for the police to call him. A whole year, you come in the parliament to complain. How many times in that year you came to the parliament? At no point in time, you didn't wait. You couldn't call a waste that time press conference to say you want a police investigation and so on. A whole year you wait to come back because you had nothing else to do. So we will see what mark he come into bus this time. firecracker, as usual. But this inveterate liar, and you see, sometimes, and he did that deliberately, knowing full well the Prime Minister would have responded in the manner that he did, because he knew the question that he asked and the claim that he made was a damn lie. He knew that. And he did that specifically to draw the ire of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister responded. And then he gets up to mention this article which says that CARICOM has no money. So the article said CARICOM has no money. And then he comes to say that the government didn't have money to facilitate. Let me just remind that loser of something. Since we want to quote, let me quote. Government claims that's now. Let me get it here. Mrs. Posad Bisesa. This is from the UNC's website. 26th of July 2020. Now he quoting an article that he claims was the 18th of August 2020, which was after the election, right? Keith Rowley trying to mislead the population on election observers. Political leader of the UNC, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, is accusing the Prime Minister of trying to mislead the public on the ability of Commonwealth observers to monitor the 2020 general election in Trinidad and Tobago. On July 8th, 2020, the Prime Minister announced via his Facebook page that he wrote to the CARICOM Secretary General, Erwin Larocque, and Commonwealth Secretary General, Patricia Scotland, Queen's Counsel, formally inviting them to send election observers to TNT. On Friday, 24 July, after Mrs. Prasad Bisesa questioned the status of the international election observers, and during a virtual line, the Prime Minister indicated that the Commonwealth had replied saying they didn't think they would be able to come because of the cost. Dr. Rowley is once again trying to mislead the population. The Prime Minister is well aware that the revised guidelines for the Commonwealth election observation, were agreed to and released at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2018, which he attended. During the meeting at Chogam, it was stated that the new guidelines adopt best practice as reflected in the Declaration of Principles, right? Section 8.2 of these guidelines state, listen to this, the costs of each observer mission are covered by the Secretariat. No funds are sought from the host member country being observed. She goes on to say Rowley's actions can now be viewed as an attempt to not only stall the process so that the observer teams would not have enough time to enter the country and undergo the 14-day quarantine, but a deliberate attempt to hoodwink the population mere days before the election and avoid scrutiny. So as she mentioned here, Section 8.2 of the guidelines say the cost of each observer mission are covered by the Secretariat. No funds are sought from the host member country being observed. You think Rudal Munilal is not aware of that? So what nonsense you're coming in the parliament to ask the Prime Minister about if funds have been set aside and if the government will set aside funds for the to facilitate the observers. That is not the responsibility of the government. In 2020, as we would recall, when the Prime Minister, as indicated there by Prasad Bisesa, wrote to the Commonwealth Secretary General, Baroness Patricia Scotland, and Mr. Erwin Larocque, both would have indicated financial challenges. And I recall very well seeing that interview that the Prime Minister did on the evening news when the question was put to him. And the Prime Minister indicated, right? Remember the letter that he got from the Commonwealth Secretary General when he indicated the issues with money. And the UNC were doubted, we want to see the letter, publish the letter. The Prime Minister sent them a copy of the letter and then he caused it to be published on social media as well. Right? So in case the UNC want to, as you know how they're very underhanded and dishonest. So he made sure he published the letter. Pictures of it were on social media for all and sundry to see and read that what he said, the response that he got was in fact what it was. And I recall, and I'm sure many of you do too, that the Commonwealth Secretary General and the Secretariat indicated that there were some financial challenges because we were in COVID, right? And that their budget was constrained. And in addition to that, one of the problems that they would face, and again, it comes back to the issue of cost, was because our borders were closed, there were no commercial flights available. So that if it is the election observers who are coming in, that the Commonwealth Secretariat, having responsibility for funding the mission, as Prasad Bisesa mentioned, would have to charter a private aircraft to bring them. So that is one cost, right? Then, because, again, we were in the throes of COVID, and the observers would have had to undergo the 14-day quarantine, as Pasad Bisesa mentioned, the Secretariat will have to find money to house these persons in a hotel for 14 days and then house them for the further days during the election and after the election, right? So that was additional monies which they indicated they did not have. And similar to the CARICOM Secretariat. And the media asked Dr. Rowley if the government of Trinidad and Tobago would consider paying for the mission to come. And Dr. Rowley said, and I remember it, he is not aware if that is permissible. But in any event, even if the government were to do that, then if the Commonwealth, if the observers were to give a favorable report and say that the elections were free and fair, then persons on the other side could come and say the only reason why the observers said that is because the government paid for them to come. And they were here at the behest of the state. The state put them up in hotel and the state paid for the plane and government paid for all of these things. And therefore, that is why they're saying that. That is what Dr. Rowley said. The man never said we didn't have the money. He said he wasn't aware if it was permissible. And even if it was, if the government were to pay for these things, underwrite the cost of them coming, the perception that would come out if it is the election was won by the PNM and a favorable report was given by the observers. So for this lying wretch to come in the parliament and make this claim and then ask the Prime Minister about putting aside money, the challenges that existed in 2020 do not exist today. The borders are reopened. There are commercial flights coming in and leaving the country. So that the exorbitant cost that the Secretariat would have had to undergo to charter a private aircraft does not exist, right? They could just go book a flight, come to Trinidad. If they want to come business class or if they want to go economy, certainly far less than what it would have cost in 2020 for a private jet. So the challenge is now that the economies that contribute to the Secretariat are now back in full swing. The economies have been reopened and commerce is taking place again, and they could now contribute again to pre-pandemic levels. The amount of money that they were contributing to the Secretariat, the money is now available. So that whole issue, but because he's a bacchanalist, and the Prime Minister was right to respond to him the way that he did. He was correct to do so. But that is the nature of the man who wants to be the next minister of whatever. I don't know if he wants to go back in housing, probably so that he could go back and rent another Range Rover for $20-something thousand a month with strobe lights, flashing blue lights, so that he and Natasha could ride around like lords and ladies, right? So that Natasha could have Range Rover with flashing blue lights to go to the grocery. She and the son. You remember that? Yes, you, Mr. Taxpayer, you, Madam Taxpayer, they love to talk about taxpayers. To all of footing that bill, $20-something thousand a month to rent to lease a Range Rover for he to drive around in. Meanwhile, he probably had his own private Range Rover. What was the need for that? The Ministry of Housing had umpteen number of SUVs. The SUVs that were purchased by the Manning administration for the 2009 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, Chogam, and the Summit of the Americas when Mr. Obama came here. A whole fleet of SUVs. Whole fleet of sedans they had when they came into office in 2010. All of them was there. What they did? Come and say, well, Manning wastes a whole set of money to buy them vehicles. We're going and auction it. Give back the money for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? Brand new Prados, brand new Fortuners. They could have allocated those to the ministry and say, that one is specifically for the minister, as currently obtains. But no, that wasn't good enough for he. We need to lease a Range Rover. He must drive in. That is the standards that he must drive in. He wants to drive in European. He ain't driving in no Japanese car. But they want to tell you about anyway. But he looked for that. Lucky the Prime Minister couldn't pelt a few curse words in the Parliament and tell him where to get off. Let me get the rest of that there. Just now, hold all your horses.
Answers asked. Member for Couva North.
Thank you most kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, will the Prime Minister update this House on the status of work and monies expended to date on the ANR Robinson International Airport Tobago expansion project, including the construction of a new terminal building?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, The new airport terminal building and associated infrastructure works project is at this time 74% complete. Payments to date to the main contractor total $65 million US, not including land acquisition costs of approximately $300 million, which was paid at an earlier time during a number of processes. And Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that that new airport terminal building will have special facilities to reduce or eliminate human trafficking in all its forms, and therefore to any and all persons who are engaged in such criminal conduct will know that the Tobago Airport terminal building is not a place to frequent or to try to bring in the victims of human trafficking.
Doc couldn't miss the opportunity to pelt in that jab there to let the member for Cuba not know, hey, there will be facilities in that Tobago Airport terminal to ensure human trafficking will not take place. So if you're inclined, you want to shift your business to Tobago, think again, all right? Kudos to Doc, you don't play. Quick on the draw, shooting from the hip, both sides, both hands. He ain't playing that, ambidextrous, all right? I ain't gonna play the response of that clown, but anyway, needless to say. Right, so that's thing number 2. Thing number 3. So I've seen a lot of comments online, and not just online. CNC3, I think it was on Friday, they did their usual what people say segment where they go out into the highways and the byways and they talk to people to ask them certain questions about things that are happening in the country. And they did that on Friday. And there was a gentleman who was talking because the question was if they believe that Mr. Imbut would bring a sweetheart budget, or if he'd be bringing goodies in the budget, given the fact that this is an election year and this would probably be his last budget before general election 2025. As the Prime Minister mentioned earlier, he can call the election as late as November of 2025. If he does, it means then that Mr. Imbut will have one more budget to read. But if he doesn't, then this would be the last one before the election, right? And the question was, do you believe that Mr. Imbut would bring goodies? And the individual was saying, yeah, well, we expect that to know because it's an election year and so on, and they need to fix the roads and whatnot. And then he went on to say that we are paying a road tax. Every time you go to the gas station and you full up, you're paying a road tax. And this is something that I've been hearing people saying, particularly fully done. In fact, the video that I mentioned to you all about the woman who was cussing about the property tax and she didn't pay the so-and-so property tax, they'll have to lock her up and all of that. She made mention of that nonsense too. So I just want to clear that one time. There is no such road tax, right? I heard Professor Misinformation and Captain Clueless also talking that talk about road tax. And every time you go, you're paying a 5% road tax when you fill up at the pump. So let's just let's clear that one time. Let me get that here. Where is it? Give me one sec. Let me just get this here. Tax. So give me one sec. I don't know. I thought I saved that, but anyway. Right. Just now. This is a Loop TT article dated the 23rd of August 2021. What road tax? Imbut hits back as MP threatens to sue over bad roads. Minister of Finance Colm Imbut is setting the record straight on the non-existent road improvement tax. You hear that? The non-existent road improvement tax. This follows claims by Member of Parliament for Cuba South, Rudy Endarsing, that citizens were paying for road repairs but were not benefiting from their contributions. Endarsing made the comment in an interview with the Guardian newspaper on Saturday. According to the article by Shastri Buran, Endarsing said, "This morning I want to ask the Ministry of Finance what the Finance Ministry is doing with the monies he collects at the pump. We continue to hear about the government spending $5 billion on COVID relief. What is happening to our road infrastructure?" The UNC MP, speaking on the mother of all potholes at Camden Road, Cuba, which has existed for at least 2 months. It was described in the report as being 2 feet deep or what, right? Indar Singh said motorists have complained about damaged tires, bent rims, damaged front ends, and destroyed axles. As a result, he urged them to sue the state for failing to upkeep or maintain the roads, as he considered a class action suit against the Ministry of Works and Transport. However, responding to the sentiments, Imbert reminded that the road improvement tax has long been abolished. Abolished. And he quoted, the road improvement tax was abolished by Act number 2 of 2006, 15 years ago. This was 2021, we're now in 2024, so 18 years ago. Yet opposition MPs are telling their constituents that motorists are still paying this tax at the pump for the benefit of fixing their roads, but the monies are going elsewhere. Somebody put a hand. So hopefully the fully done who are listening here and like to put out a stupidness but be paying road tax, and every time you go in the gas station, you're paying. There is no road tax. As heard here, it has been abolished since 2006. But when you have a member of parliament who in 2021 didn't know that it was abolished, and he is sitting in the parliament contributing to making laws. And these are the clueless clowns who want to come back into office as ministers, but aren't even aware of the laws of the land. There is no road maintenance tax, right? Abolished 18 years ago. So stop this dotish talk and commenting about all you're paying road tax and road tax. You're not paying any blasted road tax. Sheesh. Sickening every time I see them talking that foolishness. And even if the tax were in place, the fact of the matter is you're still not paying it. Because so long as you're paying a subsidy on fuel, it means that any tax that you would have been paying is the government who's paying it for you. Because when you go to the pump and you fill up, you are not paying the full cost per liter. You're paying part of it, and the government has to find the money to pay the difference to give it to NP or give it to Paria. So even if you incur that tax, the portion of the money that the government is paying for you in subsidies is paying for the tax. So you aren't paying it. So this stupid talk about you paying road tax and the road bad, please ease us up with that nonsense now. Just thought I would make mention of that. Ridiculous. Mr. Gary Griffith, I came across this morning and I felt I had to, it would be remiss of me if I didn't make mention of it. All right, let me get this here. So Mr. Griffith a couple days ago had a soup and chat, right? His campaign office is on the Eastern Main Road opposite that gas station in Mount Lambert there, where you take the lights if you want to go back out onto the priority bus route. There's a building right on the corner. I think there used to be a Jumbo Foods or some supermarket there. That is his new office, right? So he had a soup and chat. He invited the residents, the constituents of St. Joseph, which he's contesting, to come on down and have a cup of soup, a cup of corn soup and chat with us, and let me know your problems. Bring the kids, take pictures with Super Gary and whatnot. And yes. But it's interesting. Let me get this article here. Let me get it here. He made an interesting statement in that article, which I have to make mention of. And I'm sure it took a lot out of him to do that. But anyway, kudos to you, Gary. Let me get it here. Just now. Right. Guardian. Let me get it here. Let it open. Crime, a top concern for St. Joseph voters at Griffith Soup and Chat. I ain't going to read the whole thing. Just a portion. Griffith visited the corner of Mount Lambert Circular and Eastern Main Road in St. Joseph yesterday for a community event dubbed Soup and Chat. Accompanied by his wife and campaign manager, Nicole Dyer Griffith, along with other NTA executives, he distributed soup to motorists and residents who stopped by. Right. So he talks about what people told him, and okay. That's not what I want to read. Meanwhile, Griffith explained that the Soup and Chat initiative was designed to ensure every member of the St. Joseph constituency becomes familiar with the NTA and highlighted his commitment to accessibility. This is the part I wanted to read. What you are seeing here, you would not see with any other political leader. He goes on to say no political leader walks the ground, and no, that's not it, just now. Right. Right, this is what. He expressed gratitude to everyone who sent well wishes and prayers, including a political leader whom he did not name, who extended support for Dyer Griffith. Here it is. For somebody being a major political opponent of the NTA, for that individual to have the maturity the class, the professionalism, and the humility to contact me and to wish Nicole, my wife, and my family best wishes, that they would have us in prayers. That says a lot about the political maturity and the class of that individual. So he and his wife, I wish to thank them. Let me read that again. For somebody being a major political opponent of the NTA, for that individual to have the maturity, the class, the professionalism, and the humility to contact me and to wish Nicole, my wife, and my family best wishes, that they would have us in their prayers, that says a lot about the political maturity and the class of that individual. So he and his wife, I wish to thank them. Who are you talking about? Well, of course, this is the Prime Minister. He could have stopped at one adjective. He could have stopped at two. He could have stopped at three, but he went on to three and more. Maturity, class, professionalism, and humility. So notwithstanding, right, all the nasty things that he has said about Dr. Rowley, all the attacks that he has leveled against Dr. Rowley over the past years, and continues so to do, notwithstanding the perceived bad blood between the two, Dr. Rowley was the bigger man. And he picked up the phone. He didn't send him a WhatsApp message. You know. He could have done that. He could have had his secretary write a letter and send it. You know, he did. Pick up the phone and he called the man and talked to him himself. To extend his concern and his sympathy and whatnot and his commiserations, and to let Mr. Griffith know that he, Dr. Rowley, and Mrs. Rowley will keep Nicole in their prayers, and by extension, the entire Griffith family in their prayers, and they're hoping that, you know, everything would be well. He did that. He did that. You know, he didn't mention Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Like I said, all of them, they hug up. They're good friend, best buddies, ride or die. She called him. As she picked up the phone. Yeah, but Rowley's a raging bull, and Rowley's an oppressor, and Rowley don't like nobody, and Rowley this, and Rowley that. Nothing good to say about Rowley, but the same Rowley, even in the face of all the nastiness that has been thrown at him and allegations made, he was able to pick up the phone and he made a call and call Gary Griffith and talk to him. Big man thing, as they say in Trinidad. And it was appreciated so much so that Mr. Griffith had no problems. While he may not have mentioned the Prime Minister, it is clear who he was speaking about. A major political leader, right? And maturity, class, professionalism, humility. Adjectives that you don't often hear citizens of this country use to refer to Dr. Rowley. And that is why I say the people who form an opinion of the Prime Minister based on the way that he may treat with certain things based on what they see on TV and so on, that is not the measure of the man. There are some situations that call for a firm hand, but anybody who has had the opportunity and occasion to deal with Dr. Rowley on a one-on-one basis, right, in a social setting, would see that this picture that they create, that he's this big bad monster and this big bully, anything but. Just last night, PNM had the September affair in the Hyatt, and Dr. Rowley was there. He came and he gave a speech, as is norm, right? He said a lot of things in that speech which could cause one to pause and reflect, right? Don't know if they will show it, but for those of us who were there, it was one of those speeches, one of his better speeches. And he spoke about the things, how people in this country expect the government, the magic that they expect the government to work with limited resources. And they don't want to understand that when the government says to you, we just cannot afford. They want to hear that. We want 14% because Kamala gave we 14%. You want to know that the roads bad, the hospital bad, the schools bad, everything bad. Where the money coming from? We simply do not have the money at this time. There's an article in today's Guardian which I wanted to read. I think it's in the Guardian or one of those. I think it's in the Guardian, yes. I don't know if I'll have time to read it today, which speaks to the fact that over 50% of the national budget goes to transfers and subsidies. And this is something that I have spoken about before, right? Since 2018, I think it was, or 2018, 2019, there was another article published which says that 85% of the national budget goes to transfers and subsidies, wages and salaries. And that figure has now gone up because more people looking for support from the state. They're not taking advantage of the opportunities, you know, that could bring them out of their circumstance and enable them to be able to generate income so that they don't need to depend on the state. But let's face it, they are just people who just like free money. If they're receiving the free money and their circumstances improve, they get a better job, they start a business, they still expect to continue to get the money that they get in, whether it be public assistance, if it is a disability grant, or whatever it is. And the Prime Minister had to make mention of that last night. But if you haven't read that article, get a copy of The Guardian now and take a read. But I will address it. I don't think I'll be able to address it today. But it's a very good read. And of course, the fully done's would come out in the comments. I know, yeah, election coming up, and the 1% media now, they come in to defend the government and all, but fact is fact. And they are quoting the story quotes the very same economists who they always run into for commentary that is usually negative against the government. The same economists are quoted in that article. So this is not an opinion that is being proffered by The Guardian. This is The Guardian having done an interview and spoken to, I think, Marley Nats and Valmiki Arjun and others who study the budget, and they could tell you over 50%, about 54% of the budget going to pay in things like pension, government pension. If you're a former public servant, senior citizen grant, food card, things like gate, transportation, school transport, school meals, all of these different things, uniform grant, the book grant, all of these things that we expect the state to pay for, right? The subsidies, when you go to the pump, when you decide you want to take a plane ride to Tobago, the subsidy that the government has to pay because you are not paying the full cost of a ticket. When you jump on the ferry to go across to Tobago and enjoy yourself, you're going to Tobago and you're spending mad money, but you're vexed because you're going to increase the price of a ticket by $50. But when you go to Tobago, money spending galore. How much you're spending just for the hotel or the guest house alone? Then to rent a car, for those of you who are not going with your car. Money spending, yes, every night you're out on the town, but you're griping because you had to pay extra $50 or whatever is the increased fare for the airplane. The government had to pay that. The subsidies, that is how the people benefit from the natural resources of the country. And again, every time that comes up, I ask the question, the United States have more oil and more gas than we ever had and ever will have. What's the subsidy on fuel in the US? None. Universal healthcare? No. How do the citizens of the United States benefit from the oil wealth and the natural gas wealth? How do they benefit? The same people who complaining that they have to be rationing things like insulin because they can't afford it. The price, thank goodness the current administration has capped the price of insulin, I think, at $35 a month or something like that. But prior to that, you're hearing people complaining they are diabetics, but they cannot afford the insulin. Do you know what they're doing? If they're supposed to take 8 cc's in the morning or 5 cc's in the morning and 5 in the evening, they're taking half in the morning and half in the evening. So each day they're taking half of what they're supposed to, putting their health at risk. And there have been many citizens in the United States who have suffered from diabetic comas because they're not taking the amount of insulin because they're trying to ration it until the next payday. But they get a little money and they could refill their prescription. But until then, they're trying to see how best it could last till payday. In Trinidad here, you don't have that problem. My sister was a diabetic, so I know the cost. And certainly nowhere close to what it is they were charging in the US. Nowhere close. But these things we don't talk about. Oh, if I could leave, I would, I wish I could have got my green card and I bust out now. I wish I could leave if I could have migrate, if it was easier to migrate. You know, you could go and you could become undocumented, hop a plane. Go on, and hope you could hide out and get a little job somewhere where they're willing to pay you under the table until you could get your papers in again. Do it. Instead of coming here to complain and only paint the country in this bad light. I'll give you an example. So my good friend Carol has been populating a list of all the things that the PNM has done since over the course of the last 9 years, all the variety of projects and all the different things that they've invested your taxpayers' dollars in, right? That the fully dones can't see. And when you point it out to them, they're quick to pivot. So apparently somebody sent that to Philip Edward Alexander. He wasn't too pleased. But tell you what he had to say. He says, a friend sent me a list a PNM supporter sent for me saying this is why he supports the PNM and why it is disingenuous for us not to support the PNM. My response to my friend, here, Philip, roads in a mess, brown water when you get water, hours to clear immigration, traffic everywhere, people dying in fires because firefighters have no equipment, 40,000 illegal guns because the entire Coast Guard on dry dock and customs understaffed, so containers coming in unchecked. One of the highest murder rates in the world. 45th out of 90 on the corruption index. People languishing in jail on charges, not conviction for decades. 50% dropout for all or fail out rate. 90,000 acres of farmland pushing razor grass so the food mafia could make billions. And 3 trillion in oil revenue missing. Tell him personally for me he could miss me with that BS. Or was the clear immigration really, Philip? Apparently he hasn't traveled in a while. Because I could tell you, I'm certain when I land in Miami International Airport tomorrow, I am going to be spending probably at least an hour to clear immigration. Why? Because when you have a major airport like that, with about 10 flights averaging between 150 to 200 people coming in at the same time, and they have one general area for you to come through, long lines, thousands of people every single time, thousands of people, and they have about 5 Customs and Border Patrol officers to screen all of these people, thousands of people coming in. And as fast as the line goes down, more flights coming in, and the line continues to get longer. And then you might see 2 additional Customs and Border Patrol officers come, so they might open up 7 or 8 wickets to treat with thousands of people. So when you're going there, you might as well walk with a book. They don't allow you to have your phone in your hand. If they catch you, they come and tell you you're not allowed to have your phone, put away your phone, as the case may be. But prepare yourself for a long line. You go to JFK, it's the same thing. Occasionally, I cannot remember the last time that I have returned to the country and had to endure a long line in Piaco. So when he trying to make it seem as if this is something normal, this is the norm, that every time a flight comes in, that is long lines. Rubbish. It happens occasionally, but that is normally. Last time when I came in back in May, it was in May? Yeah. Customs, the immigration officers begging for people to come. That's to tell you. Almost every wicket filled. People pass through. Easy. The line for non-citizens hardly had anybody in that line. So come. Begging for people. But he trying to give you the impression that is the norm. Apparently he don't travel. But again, when the few times that those who probably travel once every decade, they come in and they see that and they like to post up video and then he see it on social media and figure that is the norm. Miss me with that BS. Well, you talk about traffic everywhere. Yeah, it's only here that traffic. Apparently he hasn't been to New York City in a while. People dying in fires because firefighters have no equipment. Really? Is that what happened the other day with the woman and her daughter-in-law? Is because they have no equipment? Really? Right. But when it is the mother and daughter, was it last year? I think it was, who died in Siparia, in the fire in Siparia, under Kamala Prasad Bises's constituency. She went to the funeral. She offered any commiserations for the family. Did she go and visit? No, did none of that. None of that. But as a constituent, well, woo. He goes on again. One of the highest murder rates in the world. One of. They like to quote that. Jamaica has already crossed over 800 murders for the year and on track to record another at least 1,000 murders for 2024. 2023 was 1,398. That was the original figure. And that figure is to be revised, as was the case in 2022, when the figure was revised from 1,495 or thereabouts, it went up to 1,511, because some of the persons who would have been shot subsequently died from their wounds, so it was considered to be murder. So 1,511, 1,398, and they're on course to cross that 1,000 again this year. But yet still, Jamaica is recording significant tourist arrivals. Yeah, for the first quarter or the first 5 months or so of this year, they recorded over 2 million visitors and over $1 billion in foreign exchange. But they have the highest murder rate in the region. But do you hear Jamaicans telling people, don't come Jamaica, you could dead. Make sure if you come in Jamaica, you put on your bulletproof vest and you have on your helmet because you could get killed. No, you don't hear Jamaicans saying that. But Chinese, yeah. Every time a cruise ship pull in, tell them people don't come off the cruise ship. Tell them watch from on the deck, because they mightn't make it back onto the ship. And this is the kind of stupid, idiotic things that they like to put out on social media. Paying the country bad. Don't come here. But we complain, not enough foreign exchange, and you can't even get $200 in the bank. What the hell do you expect? when it is that you all are doing everything possible to discourage foreigners from coming to Trinidad and Tobago to spend the hard currency. And when you're feeling the pinch of it, oh, the government and the 1% and the 1% chop it talk and the bank giving who they want and all of that. Really? What are you doing? How are you contributing to it? When you're telling the people who could bring the USA, don't come. Don't come. But that making sense to all. To the fully dance, that making plenty sense. Kamlamatics. Selwyn Kojo. What to say about Selwyn Kojo? So ever since Dr. Rowley gave Stuart Young his second acting appointment as Prime Minister, there has been talk in the public domain that this is Dr. Rowley's way of signaling his anointing of Stuart Young to be the next political leader of the People's National Movement. Now, we will recall Dr. Rowley indicated in 2020 that he had given strong consideration to not contesting the 2020 election, to hang up his political guns, right? And to retire probably on his farm in Tobago, where he enjoys taking care of his sheep and whatnot and stuff. But he recognized that he had brought in a number of new players into the political space who he needed to nurture. And he has signaled, and since then, between then to now, I think on at least 2 other occasions, he spoke to the issue of possibly wanting to retire as a politician. And so there has been talk has been rife as to who would be the next political leader of the People's National Movement. And there are names that are being bandied about, both within and outside of the party. But for some reason, the United National Congress seems to have taken a particular interest in the PNM's internal business as it pertains to who the next political leader is. And what they have tried to do, now we must understand the real interest. They're trying to mask it, but they're not doing a very good job, right? The real reason why they're taking an interest in that is because they are of the view that it is not so much the PNM is unpopular, but there are people who don't like Dr. Rowley for whatever reason. Mostly because people don't understand the policies of the government. And as Dr. Rowley spoke about it last night, he referenced it, that is only a PNM government would be willing to make the tough decisions. Unlike what happened between 2010 to 2015, where the UNC decided to kick the can down the road. So they saw the writing on the wall for Petrotrin. It is evident, anybody who reads that statement that Kevin Ramnarine, former Minister of Energy, made in the Senate in 2014, entitled "It's Time to Build Up, Not Tear Down Petrotrin." And he referenced the losses that Petrotrin had been suffering and the losses that Petrotrin was projected to suffer in 2015 and beyond. He then went on to cite research that was done in his article, speaking about some 60 oil refineries that had been closed around the world in the previous 5 years. And I always ask the question, why did he do that? If you come in to talk about Petrotrin, why would you go and do research to reference how many oil refineries had shut down around the world, not in the last year or last 2 years? You went back a 5-year span. For what purpose? What was the purpose of mentioning that in your speech? What was the purpose? And he said it. Petrotrin is not immune from that fate. And the only way you could fix that was for Petrotrin to find more oil, to drill more, find more oil, and therefore reduce its reliance on imported oil. So the millions of US dollars that they were spending to import 100,000 barrels of oil per day to provide feedstock to the refinery, that was losing money, because for each barrel of oil that you refined, the refined products that you were selling from that barrel of oil, the income the revenue you were generating was less than what the barrel of oil was costing, right? So that is why he put that in there, to let people know, hey, refineries closing all around the world. So that if it is, we win the next election in 2015, and it comes to the point where we have no choice but to shut down the refinery, you all will understand. Don't say and come and cost the government. This is something that's happening all over the world. But when the PNM says, this happening all over the world, they don't like to hear that. We want to hear about that. We want to know we live in Trinidad. But Kevin Ramnarine, to my mind, was setting the pace to let people know. He said it, Petrotrin is not immune from closure, the refinery. Because the same challenges that these other 60 refineries that shut down were facing, Petrotrin was also facing that too. And right now, the management trying to see how best they could twist and turn to avoid that. That is why Khaled Hassan Ali would have said, in his interview with the Oil and Gas Journal that Petrotrin had reduced the output or the throughput from 180,000 barrels per day to 120 in an attempt to keep the refinery from going out of business. His words. But they kicked the can down the road because they couldn't make that decision so close to a general election. But only the PNM could do that. Because the PNM is never afraid of losing elections. That's what Dr. Rowley has said. If the PNM lose, we understand the population got fed up with the party. Most of the time it's because of propaganda, and they want populist policies, which is what the UNC offers. Putting money directly in people's hand. That is what they want. Baby grant. So she's talking about that. Put me back in office and I'll give you a baby grant. Put me back in office and I'll give you land for the landless so you could build a 10 by 10. And then eventually you could have aspirations to graduate from a 10 by 10 to maybe a 20 by 20. Yeah, that is her aspirations for you. Go and find some plywood and some old galvanized and knock up something just to put a roof over your head. That is what she offers. And for some people, that's sweet to the ears. We love to hear that. Right? That is Prasad Bisesa. And that's the point that Dr. Rowley had to make last night. The tough decisions, is only the PNM will make those tough decisions. And because of those tough decisions that the party has had to make and the government has had to make, it has made the party and the government somewhat unpopular. But people blaming the leader. It's Rowley's fault. And it's Rowley. Rowley only want to oppress the people. And Rowley only taxing. And Rowley this. And Rowley that. And Rowley is a bully. And Rowley. So a lot of people wouldn't mind voting for the PNM. They just don't like Dr. Rowley. And the UNC knows that if Dr. Rowley goes and somebody else comes in his place, there are some people who, even though, might still find the idea of voting for the PNM unpalatable. At least there's a new leader, or there'll be a new leader that they could probably say, all right, let me give him a chance. You know, like what some PNM people did in 2010? Kamala Prasad Bisesa was untested. And they said, well, let me give you a chance now. It's something new. And remember, it had people like, yeah, we know a lot of those who were part of the Pandey administration that was thieving money. They're still there, but you have people of conscience, or you have people with integrity like Winston Dukaran and Carolyn Sipasad Beechan and Anand Ram Logan back then when he was seen as a man of integrity. Those were the names, people like Vernon Dilleman, Timothy Hamill-Smith, David Abdullah, and so, who sanitized that whole unholy alliance. People were looking at them, and they turned a blind eye to the corrupt who were hiding behind these so-called persons of integrity. Hiding behind them. So all everybody's saying, yeah, well, look, we're seeing good things. So even if they decline to thief, these people of integrity will step in and temper it. That didn't happen. And PNM people went and gave their vote. I have friends, big quarrel. Some of them are still not talking to today for that stupidness coming and tell me about give them a chance. And if it don't work out, well, then we could always go back to the PNM. A leopard or Chinese person come and tell me not much stupidness about give them a chance. Give them a chance. And what happened? Vision 2020 got set back 10 years. The development trajectory that we were on was set back by the foolishness that they came and did. Couldn't even survive one, they barely survived 1 2. Every Monday morning, a minister getting fired. And the decisions that they were supposed to take, and had they taken those decisions, then perhaps the country's financial circumstance would not have been what it is today. But this administration, as Dr. Rowley said last night, had to take the tough decisions that the people don't like and that the people will not understand. But as we saw in the case of A.N.R. Robinson, history will eventually absolve Dr. Rowley. Because when Mr. Robinson implemented VAT, people didn't like that. No, they was upset with Robinson. When it is that 10% cut and the COLA and all them kind of thing, and people in places like Santa Rosa and all of these developments were handing back the keys because they couldn't afford the mortgage and so on. People hated Robinson. That led to the demise of the NAR. But years later, you know, it's a good thing Robinson do that, you know. I now see the sense in that, but I now see the value in it. But you didn't see the value in it then. Right? But Prasad Bisesa will not take the tough decisions. No, she wouldn't. Because she figured to remain in office, you need to continue to give the people bad habits. You know what's the irony and the stupidity? That when you point that out to them, the very same things that Prasad Bisesa is offering today, that people calling for, you have the fully dones who say, well, it's blame, you have to blame Eric Williams. You know why the country dependent on the government? It's because of Eric Williams do that. When it is that the money was flowing, Williams take that money and he was giving it to people people, and they come with dude, and they come with URP and all of that. That's not well. Let me get this thing back here. 1 second. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, folks. Right. Yeah, call was coming in. So they cussing Eric Williams for doing the same thing that they want Kamala Persad-Bissessar to do and that they want Kamala to come back for. But when the PNM do it, it was a problem, right? When we could have afforded to support people back then. So now, the UNC figured that if Dr. Rowley leaves and Stuart Young becomes political leader, whoever, then that will improve the PNM stocks. Because all the Rowley haters, not the PNM haters, the Rowley haters will now be able to say, I could vote for the PNM now because Rowley gone. Or if Imbud go too, and this one go and that one go. So what is this they're doing? Trying to gaslight persons of African descent who support the PNM to tell them, watch, you see, Rowley want to give Olea Chinese, and it has so much African in the party. What happened to them? What happened to Camille? And what happened to Foster Cummins? And what happened to Nian Gatsby Dolly? All of them who was there in the trenches for so long, and Stuart Young had just come. And Stuart Young come in 2014. He just joined the party in 2014, and all of a sudden, Rowley want to make the leader of the party. What they say? Cockroach had no place in foul business, or foul had no place in wherever it is. But let me just give Ole Selwyn Kudju. There he was. This is Selwyn Kudju's article, and I think today's Express. There he was, resplendent amidst the splendor of the PNM's Women's League, as he asked their members to get ready for the 2025 election, acting as the titular head of the party in the absence of the leader of our grief and in the presence of his political mother, Camille Robinson Regis. He signified his desire to achieve his next career objective, the leader of the storied People's National Movement. In his elation, he didn't tell these women what to expect from a reincarnated party under his leadership. Nor, for that matter, did he tell them how he hopes to reverse the downward slide of the nation. Downward slide of the nation, okay. A protege of his leader, crafted in his style and embodying his essence, Young was a parody of the man he was hoping to replace. The leader of our grief, he's referring to Dr. Rowley, he has titled Dr. Rowley the leader of our grief. I don't know what grief he's talking about. Is the most misogynistic leader our country has ever seen. A few examples will suffice. Speaking about UNC's political leader in 2015, he quipped, she could jump high, she could jump low, she could drink this, she could drink that, she could bark at my dog, I go ignore, she can't. In March 2017, in Aruka Maloney, he was asked why so much violence was being committed against women. He responded, you call on the Prime Minister to do something about crime. I am not in your bedroom. I am not in your choice of men. I suspect he would do something only if he were in their bedroom. It is no wonder that violence against women has escalated since then. So the Prime Minister made a statement, which today has proven to be sage advice. When he told, choose your men wisely. Nothing wrong with that. Parents tell their daughters that, right? Don't bring no whatever kind of man in my house here, you know. Don't forget that. Make sure he have his head on straight if it is you bringing anybody inside here. But Dr. Rowley said, choose your man wisely. And all of a sudden, that make him the worst thing ever. During the budget debate in October 2017, he compared a woman to a golf course, golf being one of his favorite sports. He said, a golf course is like a woman. You have to groom her every day, otherwise it turns into a pasture. In one fell swoop, he had reduced a woman's essence to her private parts. That is what he got from that, right? First of all, Dr. Rowley never said a golf course is like a woman. He said a woman is like a golf course, right? There's a difference between the two, okay? And the grooming there, I'm certain he understood what Dr. Rowley meant. It had nothing to do with private parts. Dr. Rowley was advising, basically making the comparison and advising young men that you're supposed to treat women with respect, right? They're not to be roughed up and slap about the place and whatnot as if they're your personal punching bag. And you're treating them terrible and you're honing them and you have 5 and 6 different women outside and then you come home and expecting them to mind house and mind you and all of these different things. No. The point that he was making is telling men basically, you need to treat women a certain way. But certain care and love and respect. And he just happened to use the analogy of the golf course because anybody who has been on a golf course will see how well manicured and well taken care of the golf course is. But he, this warp-minded old fool, somehow found a way to make that into Dr. Rowley referencing women's private parts. Sicko. One could hear echoes of Donald Trump in all of the leader's remarks. Although the leader's followers may excuse his misogyny, these utterances have no place in today's gender-conscious world. Such verbal violence against women only opens the door for further degradation of women. No progressive woman should accept such insults from a boorish leader, whether they like him or not. Because you have a sick, warped mind, Kojo. You're sick in your head. Because I am sure the women, the intellectuals in the parliament, and those outside who were listening understood exactly what Dr. Rowley was talking about. And it had nothing to do with what is between their legs. But because you're sick, a dirty, sick-minded old man whose usefulness, right, who has outlived his usefulness. He's past his shelf life. He's on his expiry date and should just pack up and hush instead of publishing this drivel. But I'm not surprised that the Express was happy to publish this trash. I haven't been able to see what Ralph Maraj posted today, but he goes on to talk about, no, I'm going to talk about that, femicide and all of that. Young must demonstrate a determination to protect women. If, as he says, he recognizes the intelligence, strength, and power of women in society, then he has no recourse but to repudiate his leaders' misogynistic statements, apologize for the harm they have caused to who? And pledge to promote and protect women's rights. The primary function of PNM women cannot be winning another election for the boys. Young also needs to let us know where he wishes to take us in a world that is pushing towards new technological frontiers. Thus far, he has only repeated the words of his master. And while he has been a faithful soldier and presumably a hard worker, these two attributes are not the primary attributes needed for the leadership of our society. Well, I wish Mr. Kojo would have defined for us what are the primary attributes for leadership of our society. And tell me, are those attributes to be found in the alternative? Persad Bisesa, who has no problem going on a platform and calling Dr. Rowley a donkey fool and setting that example for the young people to disrespect the Prime Minister and the office of the Prime Minister? That when it is she could allow a man who she has sitting in the Senate every day doing doubles and coffee and Douglas politics and talking all kind of nastiness and making insinuations that the Minister of Education is having an affair with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Youth Affairs and National Service, talking about red couch and some red couch, and you had to walk past 2 parrots and 2 dogs, and Dr. Rowley does have women lie down on the couch and then they come inside there. And yes, those are the attributes of a leader, and that she will reference that and use some of the foolish names that this clown uses to describe members of parliament and members of government, things like bundles and all that, and small pin, right, and tight pants. This man sitting in the Senate, she put him there. She's fully aware of the nastiness that he says and continues to condone it. In fact, at times, sometimes when she's on the platform, she will repeat it and say, Anil is, Anil is get up and Anil say, and Anil say. And you're happy to repeat what Anil says, as vile and as nasty as it is. But you want to come and talk about Dr. Rowley being a misogynist? Really? Really? Sawen Kojo? This man who was found to be in a room, videos found him in a room with 2 Spanish-speaking women, rolling what appeared to be a joint. And this very same woman who wants to be Prime Minister again said, no, that spoke to him and I accept his explanation. It was voodoo. And PNM, that was PNM Photoshop. PNM Photoshop a video. Right? The same fool who had no problems appearing on one of their crime talks platform. They invited him to speak, and he was only too happy to take up the invitation to go and sit next to Persad Bisesa and yap and support her foolishness. Those are the attributes that we should look for in a leader. Mr. Kojo, no criticisms of Persad Bisesa, who has absolutely no problem offering to the citizenry of this country a man who is on $1 million bail for fraud, misbehavior in public office, conspiracy. Those are the qualities that we should look for. A leader who has no problem in offering to the citizens of this country as an election candidate, a man who is the subject of police investigation into human trafficking and prostitution, and who is accused of engaging in wrongdoing, misbehavior in public office, while he was holding high office as on boards of certain entities in this country, state enterprises? Is that the leadership traits and qualities that we should support? Is that what Mr. Young should demonstrate? That he has no problem in offering to the citizens of this country as an election candidate somebody who was fired from not one but 2 public utilities companies for gross misbehavior, and who has demonstrated the propensity to thief and to engage in corrupt acts, if in government? Those are the attributes we should look for. Selwyn Kojo? That's what we should look for. Somebody who was Attorney General, while one of the worst frauds that was ever perpetrated on the citizens of this country, according to one Bob Lindquist, who has no horse in the race, free from local passions. He's not a trainee, right? He's a noted forensic accountant from Canada who came here and in the space of 2 months was able to audit the Piarco Airport project and tell the citizens of this country, describe that project as the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on the citizens of a country by its government. Those are the words of Bob Lindquist. And she, as Attorney General, sought to get rid of Mr. Lindquist. When she became Attorney General, after the man who was going after the corruption, Ramesh Maharaj, was going after the corruption, and he hired Bob Lindquist and retained the services of Carl Hudson Phillips to assist Mr. Lindquist. When she, after Mr. Pandey fired Mr. Maharaj for doing that, for wanting to be a corruption fighter and a corruption buster, the only person he could find to replace Mr. Maharaj was Kamla Prasad-Bissessar. Why? Why did he fire Mr. Maharaj? And why choose Kamla? You know why? Because she is pliable, right? And he had no problem. So that when she got in, rather than look at the report, the substance of the report, the contents of the report, and seek to continue where Mr. Maharaj started off, what did she want to do? Let me see how I could fire Bob Lindquist. Let me see how I could fire Carl Hudson Phillips. Let me look at the terms and conditions under which Ramesh hired them, and let me see if I could poke holes in it so that I could fire them. No concern about the report. And she wants to know why it is that the report was an interim report, when it is that he was paid, Mr. Lindquist was paid so much money to do this work. Because he was retained 2 months before the general election. And he didn't know if it is the Attorney General who hired him would still be the Attorney General after the election, because the PNM could have won. So he wanted to make sure that he at least handed in something to his employer. So if the PNM had won and they didn't choose to retain his services, he would have done the work for which he was paid, unlike Adolphus Daniel. But she sat down on her hands, did absolutely nothing, and tried to cover up. And then 23 years later could come and tell us that the Piarco Airport scandal was nothing more than a 23-year-old PNM propaganda campaign designed to make the UNC look corrupt. And when it is that the findings of the inquiry into that project started to come out, the report that had been covered up for years, I'm going to say covered up, but shelved, when it is that the newspaper started to publish the findings of that inquiry, and she couldn't deny it anymore, come and say, well, it's not me, you know. Remember that happened under Pandey, not me. It's not my government, so don't blame my government for what happened under Pandey. You were part of Pandey's government, and you were his Attorney General, and you were complicit in the efforts that when Pandey could make the statement that he knew about this interministerial committee, he described it as being what? A feeding frenzy and a milch cow. And it is only because Jolene John intervened and went to Mr. Pandey and tell him, and he realized, hey, the jig is up. Because Jolene John ain't going to tolerate this nonsense. And if it is she decides to resign, having recently been appointed as a minister for the very same project, questions will be asked. So you know what? Let me get rid of this ministerial committee that I am aware has been stealing money. Jolene John's word, the greed was palpable. It was sickening. You could feel it. And in the face of that, if Jolene John was able to make that assessment based on one meeting of this interministerial committee, she came to that assessment and she was so overwhelmed that she saw it fit to go to Mr. Pandey and tell him. But Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, who was in the cabinet all the time, saw the report, and she would have been able to see correspondence that Jolene didn't see. And she is telling you that was a 23-year-old PNM propaganda campaign. But it took Jolene one meeting to realize the corruption taking place. And to this day, Prasad-Bissessar will still continue to tell you that that was a propaganda campaign and it had no wrongdoing there. I wonder if Mr. Kojo is telling us those are the attributes that we need to look for in a leader. Yeah? I wouldn't be surprised. He goes on to say We also have to ask how appropriate it is to elect someone to lead the state when he has so many personal conflicts of interest with the general well-being of those he wants to serve. Within 9 years, Young has had 101 recusals, amounting to 36% of all cabinet recusals. And again, Selwyn Kudjo is being dishonest, because he wouldn't go into details to tell you that some of these recusals were related to the same issue. The same issue that would have come before cabinet on numerous occasions. In some cases, it may have been in the item that is being discussed probably involves somebody who was Stuart Young's client before he became minister, because the man is an attorney at law. So if it is I am in cabinet and something comes before us and somebody that I represented in the past, in my previous position before I became a minister, their name is mentioned in this thing that for contract or something or whatever as the case may be, because the representation doesn't have to be anything untoward. It could have just been I'm this person's lawyer, and I don't want it to appear that here it is that this person has bid for a state contract or something that the government is considering, and I am sitting around the table to vote on something that could benefit somebody that I represented before. So you know what? Let me excuse myself, right? I don't want it to be said at all that I try to influence this decision in any way to benefit that person. So let me leave. And that same item might have come up 5 times, 10 times before cabinet for discussion. And each time it comes up, he will recuse himself. But they want to give you the impression that there were 101 recusals, and each of those recusals represents something different. This dishonest bastard wants to give you that impression. And he goes on. That's not it. Right. This is no small matter given the wealth of Young's father and Young's brother, and Young's younger brother. So apparently he knows what is in Mr. Young's father's bank account, and he knows what is in Stuart Young's brother's bank account. Apparently he knows that. In contrast, Eric Williams, George Chambers, and Patrick Manning, 3 of our most esteemed leaders, died as paupers. Their disapproval of Young's ill-timed coup can be heard beyond their graves. Anyway, just now. Right. What evil spirit has taken over our party? Our party? Our party? You can't be serious. Paulo Callahan has argued all leadership reacts to the stimuli the people provide, whether negative, positive, or reticent. Leaders are emboldened to act in the manner they choose on the strength of signals from the public. Young has asked PNM women to prepare for election warfare. Shouldn't they ask if he is qualified for the prize that he seeks? PNM members should speak now to defend their party's integrity or forever hold their peace. So says Selwyn Kudjo. First of all, has Stuart Young told anybody that he is vying for the position of political leader? The man got 2 acting stints as prime minister, and all of a sudden everybody all over themselves. That is Dr. Rowley's signal, right? Dr. Rowley tell earlier, there's a process in the PNM. You don't just anoint a leader, there's a process, internal process, so that when that time comes for the current leader to be replaced, at this point in time, there is no vacancy. But when the time comes, it is the membership of the party, the people who pay their dues every year, who will make the decision as to who the next leader will be. And we will be uninfluenced by bold, blatant attempts by those on the other side to gaslight, to come and Selwyn Kudjo ain't fooling nobody. This whole article here, all this set of drivel that he write there, is just to mask the real reason, the real issue that he has with Stuart Young, and the fact that Stuart Young is not an African. And he would like to continue to push this narrative that the PNM is supposed to be an African party. And how do you define an African party? By the leader. So somehow, if you change Dr. Rowley, who is of African descent, and you put Stuart Young, the PNM will no longer be considered an African party, as if that is a bad thing. Because certainly the makeup of the cabinet doesn't speak to an African party. But he giving you the impression that